So, hello to Mark Caesar and anyone who is lurking in the chat and or watching in the future. This week, we are continuing our catch-up month with a something we missed from Daniel Craig month because of unforeseen circumstances, and we are discussing Knives Out.
Yeah. Just because I see in the chat, me too, Mark. Season, me too.
Yeah.
Cheers.
And as usual or as is going to be the new Media Musings tradition, we are going to start with what everyone's favorite uh, what everyone's favorite censorship guide disguised as a review service has to say about the movie. Because I'm the only apparently I hit the right amount of fundy background to be the only atheist creator who actually knows that Plugged In exists.
Yeah. I will point out, folks, that when I heard Ring reading the review of this, they cackled out loud, so this should be fun.
Yeah.
So let's go.
So once again, we're gonna skip over the introduction because that's just an overview. The introduction's always just an overview of the plot, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So
Positive elements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're not going to find a lot of role models in this Agatha Christie-like murder mystery.
No shit, Sherlock. Have you read Agatha Christie?
Yeah.
Everyone has a motive, and most seem to have the ahem stomach
to potentially do so.
Okay.
And but I can say that Blanc finds someone with a good, even sacrificial heart in the sprawling Thrombey mansion, and that heart winds up being an important piece of the puzzle. Thrombey, you could argue, administers some tough love to his more wayward family members. And while alive, he does his best to save someone from what he sees as an unfair fate.
Okay, yes. Fair comment, folks. We are going to be discussing this movie in depth. There will be spoilers if you've not seen it and you don't want to. Go away, watch it, come back and watch this on demand later on.
Yeah, watch it on the VOD. Now, spiritual elements. You know, Marta lives with her mother and sister, and the whole family seems to be Catholic. Yeah.
They're Spanish.
Yeah,
or Mexican.
Basically, it's just the spiritual elements, unless the movie touches on non-Christian cultures, usually doesn't have anything spicy in it. It's literally usually just like we see religious iconography.
Yeah. So yeah, the Marta's family are Catholic, of course they are.
Yeah.
And
Joni Chanson meditates in her bedroom because
that's influencer white girl, vaguely Eastern meditation.
Yeah.
With the symbols from at least two different religions.
Yeah.
In that one shot of her, it just
very
white girl nonsense.
Yeah, like typical white girl MLM owner nonsense.
Like typical white girl. I went to India and I found my spirituality.
I'm like 100%. Well, not 100%.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely MLM.
I'm pretty sure her skincare empire is literally just an MLM that she happens to be at the top of.
Yeah, it's an MLM.
Yeah. It's a skincare brand, but we're really selling a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's an MLM, darling.
Let's see. Sexual content. Someone is having an affair. We see an incriminating pics of a kiss. Walt's 13-year-old son Jacob reveals he was in a bathroom for quite some time, where he heard, and some speculate he was masturbating.
One alleges that he was doing so joylessly to dead deer for what that's worth. Can I just point out? Okay, look.
Yeah.
The fact that they think there is a moral equivalence between a teenage boy masturbating and a teenage boy masturbating joylessly to dead deer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum, right? But if you're masturbating to dead deer, go see a therapist.
Yeah.
It's not normal. It's not healthy. And like, I know what the insinuation is with the comment. The insinuation is that he's a psychopath, right?
Yeah.
That he gets off to images of violence and gore.
Yeah.
Right, that's what the insinuation is with that statement, which makes a lot of sense in the context of who that character is. But
I did skim through this beforehand, and I don't recall seeing it. But I wonder if the mention of him possibly swatting Syrian refugees is going to be mentioned in any of the negative elements in here.
we will find out. But yeah, family members insinuate sometimes crassly that Marta was having sex with her. Asking her if she was boinking their granddad isn't crass. It's so not crass, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Violent content. Harlan's throat is cut. We don't see the knife slice the skin, but a flashback still suggests the horror of the act. Overdoses of medication are key to the story's plot. Family members fight, mostly verbally, but sometimes the arguments threaten to crest to physical violence. A building is burned down. A car chase leads to some minor property and vehicular damage. In the background, we hear audio from a salacious television show graphically describing a murder and the mutilation of the murder victim. We see a dead body along with someone who's on the verge of death.
Yeah, that's all. Like,
and
yeah,
this
that
is
delicious TV show was probably something like Law and Order or something,
or like Law and Order, or like maybe some kind of like true crime dramatization or something.
Yeah.
Now, but so, and this is why I say that Plugged In is a censorship guide disguised as a review service, because basically what they do, like this violence section is a key example of this. They just list out everything that that a Christian parent can use to justify banning media in their house.
Yeah, and they do it like there are certain I've noticed, like a building is burned out. We see a dead body. You'll always, like, these are not things that anyone watching any media is necessarily going to have a problem with anyone over the age of about 8 years old seeing.
Yeah.
Right. But what they are things that you can say, oh, I don't want my child seeing that, so it justifies. It's this is not them saying don't show your children this movie because of these things. This is how you justify to normal people why you don't let your child watch this movie.
Yeah,
that's what this is.
Though at the end, I'll scroll back up because they do have something of a content rating system for their more recent entries. That crude or profane language, 2 F words and nearly 30 S words.
Eat shit. You really eat shit.
Yeah. We also hear ass, bitch, bastard, damn, I think maybe hoe, and prick. God's name is misused at least 25 or at least 20 times, 5 of those paired with damn. Jesus' name is abused a half a dozen to someone uses an obscene gesture.
I mean,
yeah,
that's a normal day in the life where I'm from. So like,
yeah. Basically, and we're going to get further into this when we start our analysis proper, but like with the exception of a couple of characters, none of the like as it
all
was
of
with
these people are dicks.
yeah, as it was with Glass Onion, none of these are good people.
Yeah, but that's the point, right?
Yeah. Drug and alcohol content. Marta routinely injects Harlan with medication, including some morphine on occasion, with both jokingly referred to as the good stuff.
Yeah, like she's clearly giving it to him to help him sleep, to manage pain. She's not abusing it. She's giving him 3 milligrams to put him to sleep. Like, he's an old man. Leave him be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and here's so of course, friend of the housekeeper smokes marijuana. We see her stash of joints. Characters smoke tobacco, both in the form of cigars and cigarettes.
Yeah, it's a real problem.
And this is the sentence that made me crack up. Someone makes reference to Ransom using whatever designer drug is in fashion these days.
That's an exact quote from the movie, folks. Ransom's a lot of things, but he doesn't seem to be.
No, the quote
he doesn't seem to be stoned.
The quote is whatever. The quote is, "You'll have to sell your Beamer, give up your membership,
hand in your notice at the country club, and stop your
and stop, and kick your fashion drug habit."
Yeah. So
which I took it as he likes spending, he likes buying expensive clothes for himself.
I took it as you're on the latest drug for the young, beautiful, and city slickers.
Yeah.
Like, everyone, the jokes about how every model's taking cocaine and every actor's got a drug dealer on speed dial and all this. That's how I took that comment.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, I took it as he's a bit too much of a fashionista. And given how
possibly a bit of both, but he does seem sober.
And also given how preppily he's dressed, like, all the time.
I mean, yeah, again, he might be some kind of model, and the hint is that, he's taking something to stay skinny. Because he is like a fucking pig. Like, there's a point in the movie where he literally just opens a thing of Biscoff and eats like 4 of them in about 2.5 minutes, not even that on screen. He eats like a pig, but
milk?
It's Captain America, isn't it?
Chris Evans.
Chris Evans. So he's like a pig in the movie. So he's on something to stay skinny. Is the insinuation of that comment. I feel like this is like, as someone who wasn't raised in that sheltered background.
Yeah.
I hear that line and I go, okay, he's snorting something, smoking something, or taking something to stay skinny. Because that's what that means. You, from a background of, I've never heard that comment before, go, hang on. You hear it very up. It's not. It is insinuating that he is on drugs. That's what that line is for.
Okay. So apparently, I heard the line wrong, and Plugged In heard it right.
Yeah, they heard it right, but they are being very precious.
Yeah.
Also, I do love, right?
Yeah.
There's a shot, and it mentions it here. 2 characters sit at a pub at a table. No. What happens is she starts talking. It cuts away. It comes back. No more than 10 minutes has passed, right, for her to tell this story. And there's 4 empty beer bottles in front of him. Look, I drink fast. I drink fast when I want to. But even I looked at that and I was like, dude.
And
like, even if she's drinking him drink for drink, which she's not drinking in that scene. We hope she's not drinking because she immediately gets in a car to start driving. But that's still very fast.
I think she is, but not alcohol, because we also see a Roy Rogers in a glass.
Yeah. So, yeah, she's drinking, but she's not drinking alcohol. He's drinking beer, and he drinks 4 in the space of about 10-15 minutes.
And for those of you who don't know, Roy Rogers is Coca-Cola with cherry syrup.
Yeah.
Usually garnished with a cherry on top.
Yeah. So, they get drunk. They have political discussions, which I'm sure we'll get into. Yeah. But yeah.
Other negative elements. As mentioned, Marta cannot lie without vomiting, and she becomes a de facto and gross lie detector of sorts.
Sorry, I've just seen the phrase toss her cookies.
Yeah.
And that's not what I would have assumed that phrase meant.
Including once all over the face of another character. In that scene, the vomit is visible. In others, we mainly hear her as she keels over a toilet or urn, or in one case, a plastic glass.
Yeah. She is quite gross. Like, I have an issue with watching and hearing people vomit. This movie is quite difficult for me. Like, that's a fair comment.
Or, so that's like,
that's the only fair.
Yeah, that is a valid trigger warning for sympathetic pukers.
Yeah, maybe not a trigger warning, but definitely a content warning.
Yeah, valid content warning for sympathetic pukers, but once again, this is buried all the way down at other negative elements.
Yeah.
As you might expect in a movie built around myriad deceptions, we see many characters lie and attempt to mislead either the police or each other, sometimes going to extreme lengths to do so. Also important, the movie encourages us at times to root against the police.
That's a very weird way of viewing it. No, it doesn't encourage us to root against the police. It encourages us to use our own brains and to consider the difference between right and wrong and what's just and what's not.
Yeah. Family members, we learn, have taken advantage of Harlan's financial generosity.
Mm.
The Thromby family can be offensively patronizing towards Marta, whose mother immigrated from some strangely unspecified Latin American country. Most say she's like part of the family, but no one knows where she actually immigrated from.
Yeah, like one thing she's Brazilian, one thing she's Mexican, one thing she's from Uruguay. Like,
well, and I think it's Richard who like every time he mentions it, he mentions a different country.
Yeah.
Issues related to immigration, both legal and illegal, pop up often. We hear someone express a great deal of fear that millions of Mexicans are, the character believes, taking over the country.
Can I just? That is the most charitable reading of that line.
Yeah.
A great deal. It's not a great deal of fear. It's blatant racism, and it's designed that way. You are expected to watch that conversation and think, all of these people are assholes. That's what you're expected to take from that conversation as audience. That's how that's geared.
So the question is, should we give Focus on the Family props for even mentioning it or not, given how this is run by Focus on the Family?
No, because I think they are defending it, or at the very least they are trying to mitigate the anger you feel at the character for it in the way they describe it.
Well, and especially since the next sentence, and mind you, this is in other negative elements. Jacob, Walt's son, is frequently called a Nazi.
I've just realized the irony of Jacob being Walt's son and being called a Nazi.
Yeah.
Different Walt, but you know.
Yeah.
He's called a Nazi because he is a little Nazi brat.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even try to hide it.
Oh, yeah, his dress is very 1930s German chic.
Yes. And he's very, like, he calls his cousin an SJW and a liberal snowflake. And he is and he's described as an alt-right internet troll. And his
And
parents do not deny this fact.
Plugged In didn't mention the fact that he was accused of swatting Syrian refugees
I'm
while
not
in the
surprised,
bathroom.
though they probably don't see any problem with that. They probably think that made him an upstanding American patriot.
Yeah.
Because it's plugged in.
Yeah. Conclusion. Says something about entertainment today that drawing room style murder mysteries are considered pretty innocent.
That's because they are.
Yeah. Knives Out layers on a bit more content than your typical Agatha Christie story, but only by degree, not a quantum leap into the swamp. Murder is, of course, part of the story, but it's treated less graphically than a typical episode of your favorite CSI clone. No, if I was going to gather our typical band of content culprits into a library and point to the worst of the perps, I'd jab a finger in language's direction. So the author of this review is blatantly telling parents to say you don't let it in your house because of language.
Yeah.
But so Knives Out comes with a killer cast and a clever script for fans of the murder mystery genre. And I am admittedly one. This film offers its share of gratifying twists and even a rare moral of sorts. But when it comes time to cuff this flick, the charge will undoubtedly be murder most foul words.
Ugh. Right, okay, so if the worst they've got to say about this movie is the swearing, like, this movie is fairly innocent. Like,
yeah.
Okay. Your child is old enough to understand that they don't repeat words that they hear on movies.
Now, here's
This
their
movie's fine.
content caution meter. For kids, heavy content caution, medium for teens, and light for adults.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's possibly fair.
So, should we discuss Jacob?
Yes, let's, because I see questions in the chat of what makes him a Nazi. Like, his cousin describes him as an alt-right troll, and she's taking, like, the family takes the piss because apparently she's taking some, like, what was it, communist, Marxist, feminist undergraduate degree or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. He watches porn in the bathroom of his granddad's house. His dress, hair, and political ideology all appear to be inspired by his mother. Their father rarely interacts. I'm looking at the Knives Out fandom wiki, and it does say here Jacob's characterization is meant to serve as a tongue-in-cheek mockery of the people that expressed hate on social media towards Rian Johnson after he directed 2017 Star Wars The Last Jedi.
Oh. No.
So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And, yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I'm not into that fandom, but yeah. And just the way he dresses, like, he's very prep school, private school kid, and the way he talks to his cousin, right? She calls him an alt-right troll, and look, teenagers will throw any insults at her, but the fact that his immediate visceral reaction to her is to call her a liberal snowflake and a social justice warrior and an SJW. yeah, he's a right. Like, don't get me wrong. Amongst this family who have quite the discussion about immigration, he's not out of place.
Though,
wow.
I also, if I remember right, he's the one that refers to Marta as an anchor baby.
Yes, he calls Marta an anchor baby. So, like, even if he's not fully, like, outright, because like there's a bit where they're arguing as well, and one says to the other, "Oh, take off the red cap."
Yeah.
So like we are very much, and what was it? Yes, he's an asshole, but an asshole is what the country needs. Is someone who is quite obviously defending Donald Trump's presidential run.
Yeah, especially in a movie that came out in 2019.
Yeah. Like it's
so the Nazi aspect does come in because there is a lot of commentary around white privilege and immigration.
Yes.
Through the lens of the family. And I guess this is our invite to engage in this discussion topically rather than linearly.
Linearly, yes.
Yeah.
I am just looking at IMDb. Apparently, the "you had sex with my grandpa, you dirty anchor baby" line was improvised, and it was initially lost in the scene. At which point, one of the other people involved in the movie, Michael Shannon, noticed it, approached the director, and told him that Martel had a killer line, so they made George go back and capture it.
Yeah.
And
I mean that scene very much has the feeling of the script just says the family turns on Marta.
Yeah, as in, and the "I am not eating one iota of shit" line was also apparently improvised. And I'm just noticing that apparently Chris Evans adores dogs. So that's some great acting right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more the way the character behaves. Like, it is plausibly deniable the way the character behaves, or whether he's a Nazi or not. But what you get is you get these two teenagers, and the teenagers, let's be clear here, are there to take the shreds out of internet fights. These two teenagers in a room together act like they're having a Twitter spat at all times.
Yeah.
That's what that's for, right? That's what that's taking the piss out of. That culture of you're a Nazi, you're a social justice warrior, you know, you're this, you're that, you're backwards and forwards. That's what's taking the piss out. But the kid never denies it. His parents never deny it. And the kid, if anything, seems proud when he's called these things. Like, he never once so much as raises an eyebrow at being called a Nazi or a right winger or a troll. He just accepts it, and he's always on his phone. So yes, we hear that from the point of view of the other characters, but we have no reason not to believe that. It's one of the few things in this movie that you look at and you're like, yeah, I can believe that.
You know, especially given...
And like, even this kid's own aunts and uncles tell his parents, your kid is a literal Nazi, and the parents don't have an answer for it.
And
which tells me it's true.
You know, especially given his parents' views on actually, Richard is worse.
Richard is his uncle.
Yeah.
But that you know, the way Walt treats Marta, like, the whole family are racist to the core. Let's put this out there. Right? The whole family are racist. The whole family, like, they pretend to play nicey with Marta until money's involved, and then they're all vultures. You know, they all, you know, they want to pay the immigrant girl to look after their father, and then, you know, they don't know where she's from, but she's a hard worker. They call her one of the family, and yet they can't wait to be rid of her.
Yeah.
It's very, like, it's what this movie draws out really well is how easy it is to be altruistic when you can afford to be.
Yeah.
right? Like this, they when they think they're going to get all the money, they're, oh, we'll look after you, we'll take care of you, you'll be okay. The minute they think they've lost, they turn into fucking animals.
Though I will say the SJW cousin does seem the most sympathetic of the family.
Yeah, she's the most sympathetic until you realize that the only reason she's been nice to Marta is because she wants her tuition paying. Yeah. Like, that's very cleverly done in the movie. Like, she rings her, she's like, I feel like you should do, you should help. And then what you get is she puts the phone down the minute she hears that her tuition's paid.
Yeah.
Which, again, selfish.
Yeah.
And very much... It's all about optics with this family, right? This, like, who the family are, who they present themselves as, and who they believe they are three very different things.
Yeah.
And that's what makes a great mystery, right? Like, all these people, yes, they're all vicious.
I'm gonna use that to segue into something that I believe Knives Out handles a lot better than Glass Onion did, which is saying something because Glass Onion also handled this phenomenally. Character introductions.
Yes, the character introductions in this one are a lot better. Like, don't get me wrong, Glass Onion's ones are great.
Yeah.
But Glass Onion, the way it introduces the characters is very ba-dum, tropey. Whereas here, you see the characters and you're sort of introduced to them before you even know how they're all related to each other. And you're introduced to them with very little exposition.
Yeah.
Like, there's a great bit, like, he says to Marta, because I always, the dog runs up to her, is very happy to see you, the German Shepherd, because of course I noticed that. And then says, a dog's a great judge of character. And then Ransom pulls up, the dog runs up and is barking at him and he's quite obviously doesn't like him. And the dogs always bark when Ransom shows up.
Yeah.
And like, again, this is not a movie that you're not supposed to know who did it, right?
Yeah.
Like with Glass Onion, the point of this movie is not the mystery. The point of this movie is the truth.
Yeah.
And it's exploring that line between the truth and justice and where those two things may or may not stand in agreement.
And this is where I'm because we do get peeks of the characters before they're fully introduced, but what I mean by the introduction of the characters is the interview scene.
Oh yes, the interviews. The interviews are good because all these characters think they're really clever, right?
Yeah.
But when they're being interviewed, they're very guarded. Like, there's one who even says, do you really think I'm going to be trapped into shit-talking my baby brother? And then it immediately cuts to someone else in the family who is shit-talking the baby brother in the interview.
It immediately cuts to her husband.
Yeah. And it's a very clever way of showing you who's intelligent, who's keeping up, who's and who's suspicious and who's not.
And also, it gives us a great introduction to Benoit Blanc, because it's going through the interviews like in a mixed up montage, and the interviews proceed normally until one of them says some kind of a falsehood, and Benoit just hits a key on the piano, and you notice that he's been sitting there observing the entire time. And it happens for each of the interviewees.
And so what we learn very quickly is they're all liars, they're all conniving, they all have motive. they're all hiding something. But what we also learn from this is, right, which characters are clever and which ones aren't.
Yeah.
Like, the daughter, she's clever. Her husband, not so much. Like, we're led down this garden path of believing that her husband may have been the murderer. Like, he doesn't have the brains to put this together.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember when I watched this movie for the first time, and I was like, "Where's the Naxalon?" What, like, a nurse carries that standard procedure that would be in her bag all the time. So the fact that that's missing tells me that this is a setup. Straight away, she's been set up.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's all very.
And okay.
Since
you mentioned,
become very clearly like.
Yeah, so since you mentioned the Naxalone, I'm gonna have to dovetail this into Harlan Thrombey and the concept of a good death.
Yes. So Harlan Thrombey chooses his own manner of going. He goes in a way that's very fitting for a mystery writer. And that seems to be important to him, right? Like, he's got this house full of mysteries and hidden doors and fake windows and shit. Like, he wants his death to be like one of his books.
And the second he learns that he may have been lethally overdosed with morphine, he's like, "Oh, this is a good idea."
Yeah. And he starts to think about writing it down.
And he starts to take notes.
We see this, and it's not said explicitly. But there's this moment where he grabs hold of her and he says, "Look, I'm 85 years old. They could catch your mother. You'll be in trouble." He knows he's changed his will. She doesn't.
Yeah.
He knows that she cannot be seen. Like, he's figured it out that someone is setting her up. But also, there's this insinuation of, I'm an 85-year-old man. I'm in constant pain. I need a nursemaid. This is something I can do for a young family. And my life is not really worth living. Like, his death is preceded by us seeing that none of his children are really decent people. Yeah. He doesn't like his children. He feels like he's failed as a father. Like, if she hadn't have thought she'd mixed up the medication, and if she hadn't have told him that, and if they hadn't have had that conversation, he was still in a place mentally and emotionally where, if he had have killed himself that night, no one should have been surprised.
Yeah.
Like, he's cut off all his kids. He's basically destroyed his family. You know, there's for a man of that age, suddenly realizing that you're all alone in the world, that none of your kids love you for who you are or what kind of a father you've been to them, that you've provided for them, but you've not been a parent to them. Like, that's enough to tip someone over the edge, especially if he's got drink in his system after a big event like that. And you've got his family are there, and the arguments he's been having, like, that weighs a lot. And especially, like, imagine getting to 85 years old and realizing that you've got nothing to show for it. Yeah, you've got this beautiful house but the only person who genuinely cares about you as a human being is the person who's paid minimum wage to be there.
And
like, that's a very dark place to be mentally.
And not only that, but like the person, the person you've selected to handle your legacy doesn't care one lick about the artistic integrity of your legacy. He only cares about what he can get out of it.
Yeah, he just wants to sell it to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
And that's, and again, he looks at his children and he's like, I've failed you. I've not been a good father. Because, look, being a good father is not just about providing money and capital, right? He looks at them and none of his children give one whit about him. Like, they don't visit him. Like, he's got a daughter-in-law, two sons. Three sons.
Two sons.
Two sons. No, because he's got Ransom, Wall, and
Two living sons.
Richard.
Richard is his son-in-law.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's got two living sons, the daughter-in-law and the daughter. None of them care enough about him to be there in his day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And there's a sense, right? You make the bed you lie in. And he's looking around at his life and he's saying, I've made my bed, and my bed is not with my children around me. Like, my children do not want to be around me. They're only here for my money. Like, my children are only around me. And that's a very hard thing to grapple with.
Yeah.
Right?
Like his daughter-in-law is double dipping her daughter's college. Her daughter's college fund.
Yeah. His sons don't like him, don't get on with him, don't want anything really to do with him, and the one son that does is a spineless weasel who can't think for himself. Like, he's looking at this and he's saying, is this really my legacy? Is this what I'm leaving behind in the world? And that's a difficult thing, right? Because everyone wants to think they've done the best for their kids. And this is the thing. This is why we sympathize with Harlan, because he's clearly done his best for his kids. He's given his kids money. He's given them the best education. They all drive fancy cars. They all, he does his best by them. But his best has turned out a bunch of narcissists.
Also,
right?
His life is aesthetic as hell, and I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, like, all of his needs are met. Like, his needs are purely aesthetic at this point. Like, his house is very aesthetic. It's just, everything's just on point. But it's hollow, right? Because there's no love there. There's no kindness there. There's no care there. Like, the closest thing he has to care is the minimum wage daughter of an undocumented immigrant. Like,
who's the only person who can beat him at, the only person other than Ransom who can beat him at Go, but she's not playing to beat him. She just wants to make pretty pictures.
Yeah. Like, he sees a kindness in her. He doesn't see that greed and that harshness.
I just realized that line was a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah. Yeah. The only person who could be Ransom at Gob, who was also able to be Harlan, is her.
And she
outplays him.
Yeah, not by playing the game strategically, but by playing the game aesthetically and being kind.
Yeah. I like wanting to make the pretty patterns because the pretty patterns matter more than winning. And this is the thing, right? She's... And I can see why he looks at her and there's almost a paternal instinct he's got for her there, which is what makes it stick in the craw when his kids accuse her of sleeping with him. Their relationship is very innocent. It's very fun. Like, she really genuinely is afraid for him. She cares about him. Like, when she thinks he's dying, she's looking for the naloxone and she's trying to help him and wants to ring an ambulance. He's the one who stops her and says, no, you have to be selfish. You cannot call the police because your mother's undocumented. Like, she is at her core. Like, she's the linchpin of all this, but she's kind. Like, she will throw her own life away on the off chance of saving someone else's life.
Yeah.
We see it again later on in the film, and that's what all this sits on. But with Harlan and the idea of a good death, the only thing he can do in that moment for her is to die, but die on his own terms and not wait for the drugs to kill him. And again, there's a line at the end of the movie that says, if he'd have just waited for an ambulance like you told him to, he'd have lived, because he'd have realized that the drugs weren't mixed up, because she got it right. But he didn't want to wait. He decided that was his time.
And I think he also decided, like because given how long it was, and he was keeping track of the time, when he slit his own throat, he realized that the one person who knows that Marta's going to get everything
is Ransom.
Well, and also won't stop at, this is his way to go out his way.
Yeah.
This is his time to go out his way, and
again, it's sacrificial. Like, he goes out that way to protect her because he's realized he's a mystery right. He's looked at her and he's gone, shit, the drugs are mixed up. There's no naloxone. She's been set up. We assume he's clever enough to have figured that out, even if he doesn't say it outright to her. So in his final moments, what he's doing is he's creating enough of a scene to get her off scot-free. He's trying to get her off scot-free so she can have her inheritance.
Yeah.
And he's sacrificing himself to do it. That's why he doesn't have time to wait.
And I think, like, him talking through it as if it were a book idea is perhaps his way of preparing Marta for the eventuality of what's going to happen.
It is, but I think it's also his way of understanding it. Because if he thinks about it like a book, he thinks about it like an author. Remember, there's a line in the film that says, Dad used to say the movies popped into his head fully formed.
Yeah.
The plots popped into his head fully formed. They were the easy bit. So that sets you up to understand that in that split-second moment where she says, you're dying, he lays this plot out.
Yeah.
That plot pops into his head fully formed, and that's how he does it, right? Because Harlan is a very intelligent man, but he's not emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
Which is actually really interesting, because, like, I've called these kids psychopaths and narcissists already, but he's a bit like he's not. Look, what you have to understand about being a psychopath is it's a medical condition, right? And being a psychopath doesn't mean you're violent, doesn't mean you're evil, doesn't even necessarily mean that you're a bad person or that you would do anything wrong. It's a difference in the way your brain forms.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's a neurodivergent spectrum where all things where if you are not quote unquote normal, you're somewhere on there. Like dyslexia's on there, autism's on there, trauma's on there, BPD's on there, and being a psychopath is on there, as is being a narcissist.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're going to harm someone. It doesn't mean you're going to do anyone any damage. It just means your brain works differently. It's like something like a massive percentage of surgeons and CEOs and, doctors, detectives are psychopaths. Like, would be psychopaths if they'd be diagnosed that way if it was a problem in their life.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're evil. It's because their brain is wired a certain way. Because look, straight up, you've got to be a certain kind of person to have a steady hand and be able to stay calm in a situation where you've got a person dying in front of you. You've got to be a certain kind of person to do that. Right. And it's not a bad thing. And, people like surgeons and CEOs who are making multi-million-dollar decisions in split seconds and don't have time to stop and think it through and question it, and, don't have time to second guess themselves. They've made their quote unquote psychopathy work for them.
Yeah.
Right. And you see it all the time. You see it in people who, when you see on The Wolf of Wall Street, right? That movie where he would just make decisions and he never stopped to think about the human consequences of those decisions.
Yeah.
Like American Psycho, when we watched that, like his psychopathy was not like, yes, he was a serial killer, but also would he have been as good a lawyer if he wasn't a psychopath?
I don't think he was a
Or
lawyer.
businessman or
Yeah,
whatever he was.
yeah. He was a vague
Stocks and
80s,
shares trader. Yeah. Stocks and shares trader. Like
vague
you
80s
cannot
businessman.
you cannot be buying and selling stocks and shares at the speed you have to buy and sell stocks and shares to make a profit on the stock market if you are stopping to think about the human cost of your decisions. When you've got 7 seconds to make a decision and click twice, and it takes 3 seconds for the computer to recognize the click, you've got to make that decision like that. Knowing that you're going to destroy people's lives or whatever, you've got to be able to make that decision and live with it. As a surgeon, like surgeons make decisions all the time, that life or death decisions. And a person who is neurotypical, I'm not saying that we're not like I'm not neurotypical and neither's Ring, but in general, I'm not saying people who are not at that end of the neurodivergency spectrum are not capable of making those decisions in a moment. But making those, like building a career on being able to make those decisions. Build it like Doctor Strange, right? At the start of the movie, he's given all these cases and he just flicks through them like he's playing cards and he doesn't care. Like he's just like, oh yeah, that one's too fat, that one's not 100%, no, that one's easy, I'll take that one. And there's no emotion to it, and it's very
Or
it's
that one's too easy, that one's too risky, I'll take that one because that'll increase my reputation.
Yeah. Like it's a zero-sum game and there's no emotion in the decision. Now, I've got friends who are diagnosed psychopaths, friends who I love and adore and who are very good friends. They are not without emotion. They are not without love and care. Like I've got one friend who loves their dog. Loves their dog more than most humans love other humans. Like, I'm not joking. Loves their, you would not know. And I'm being very vague about how I describe them because they told me in confidence the diagnosis, but I'm using this as an example to tell you, if someone tells you they are a psychopath, it doesn't mean they're a serial killer. It doesn't mean they're dangerous. It doesn't even mean they're violent or there's a problem. What it means is their brain is wired differently. You should not react to someone telling you they've been diagnosed as a psychopath any differently than you would if someone told you they've been diagnosed with autism or ADHD or any other. Like, it's a different wiring. And we see this in Harlan. We see that kindness in Harlan, that ability to love. It doesn't mean that he has all the hallmarks of a textbook psychopath, right? He's able to think situations through quickly, very calmly. He doesn't get emotionally involved in situations. He's very like he goes from one to another, and everything's very laid out and thought through. But his children, what his children don't have that he does, because there is a genetic element to psychopathy, right? There is a genetic element. It doesn't mean anyone who's got it is going to have children who are. What it means is, look, when you're in a situation where your brain is wired that way, or you're born with your brain wired that way, because it can be a birth thing or it can be caused by trauma and other stuff in young life. It's a combination of factors.
Something basic training, something military.
Yeah, something trauma makes you angry. Trauma makes you cold, right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that his children are psychopaths that's the problem. It's that they do not have the emotional grounding, the support, the structures in place to teach them what's right and wrong. They
Yeah.
did not have from a young age someone there who was actually kind, and they did not have a person to emulate and to learn how to empathize. Because like psychopaths are not incapable of empathy. They just have to learn it. Like as
And
kids, like, you know, that's the difference.
and with the, immense wealth from Harlan's, publishing career, they
They never
didn't
had to.
they never
Yeah.
had any kind of consequences either.
Mm. It's like most people who are diagnosed psychopaths are only diagnosed after they've done something violent or criminal. Because you wouldn't notice otherwise. You would not know. Like, I guarantee you, anyone who watches this now or in the future, you know someone who is somewhere on the spectrum near psychopathy. You know someone and you would not have a clue. Like that one person you know who's always got a cool head in situations. That one person you know who you could you could tell them the 3-minute warning had gone off, and they'd have a plan of how they were going to spend every second of that, and they'd be stone cold calm all the way through. Like, and not stone cold calm is as in I'm trying to be calm for you. They would just be stone cold calm. The way Harlan is when he's told he's got 5-10 minutes to live and 5 minutes without symptoms, he's stone cold calm. He doesn't prioritize his own life. He doesn't prioritize, like, he has different priorities and he's stone cold calm about it. That's that indication. His kids, you see Ransom, he does the same thing. Like, he's stone cold calm about everything he does, but there's a malice to him that his father didn't have, because he's never had to stand on his own 2 feet and learn himself, and he's never had the consequences of that malice before.
And Harlan being, as Kitty would like to term it, neurospicy,
Yes,
actually makes a lot of sense, because what we know about Harlan, so it really makes sense, if he does view interpersonal reactions as something of an intellectual puzzle. We know that Harlan really likes his puzzles.
Yeah, like, this is what it is. Like, it's a puzzle. It's detached, but that doesn't mean it's heartless. That just means they don't care. Like, and again, I've got more than one friend who's had the diagnosis. Some who are more open about it than others. And what I've come to observe of them is, it's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't feel emotion. It's not that they don't have empathy or they don't love. It's that when they do, it's different. It's the way they respond to things is slightly different. And like, I've got friends who will message me and be like, I don't understand why normal people are reacting like this to this thing. And they come to me and I say, they're reacting because of this. Like a political story, maybe. Like, they'll come to me and they'll say, I don't understand why are people so angry about this? I'm like, and they get it, but they need someone to tell them why they should be angry, because they don't necessarily receive it the way we do. And like, I'm neurodivergent as well, but I'm a different kind of neurodivergent.
Yeah.
I'm the very empathetic ADHD. So, put me in a room with someone who's diagnosed psychopath and it's great, because I get all emotional and they're like, Noodle, calm down. It's all right. This is, and then they look at something and they're confused. And I'm like, no, don't you see that this is what this is going to cause? And this is what people, and then they get that. So we sort of complement each other. Probably explains why I do have that many friends who are on that end of the spectrum. But I say end of the spectrum, it's more like it's more wibbly wobbly, timey wimey than it is a straight line. Right?
It's very ball of wibbly wobbly, brainy waney stuff.
Yeah. Right. And like, I've got, but they'll love very deeply, but they're able to prioritize, and like, Harlan loves her. Harlan loves Marty. He loves her like a daughter. Like, they play Go together. It's their nightly tradition. They laugh and they joke, and they're friends, and there's an intimacy there that's not sexual, but there is love there. And so his neurodivergence, it isn't that he can't love or that he doesn't understand. His neurodivergence is that in the moment when she's threatened, he absolutely can switch off all emotion, all fear, all worry, and focus on, I have to protect her. And do you see how that ability is really good for people like lawyers and surgeons and business people and CEOs?
And it also made him the mystery author that so successful as an Agatha Christie like mystery parlor murder mystery author, because when you view interpersonal relationships as a puzzle to be solved, it the hallmark of the parlor murder mystery is all the conflicting interpersonal relationships and motives that need to be untangled.
And the thing about the parlor mystery is, right, as vaguely neurotypical people or people who are not neurodivergent in that way, it's very difficult for the audience to imagine this as a Cluedo board and you just logic, right? For someone who's neurodivergent in that way, that is automatic for them. That's how they view it first. It's like, for example, like, Ring, you love animals, right? You love nature documentaries.
Yeah.
Could you be a nature documentary cameraman, say, or camera person? Before you answer, knowing that if the animal you were filming, that you'd been following for months and formed a pack bond to, because humans will pack bond with anything, right? Knowing that if that thing was attacked by a predator, you cannot step in, you cannot do anything, and you must just stand there and film.
Well, actually,
and you must stay steady to do it.
Actually, I was gonna say I probably don't have the physical dexterity control to keep a camera still in any type of situation.
No, but ignore that practicality of your medical conditions. From a psychological point of view, could you stand by and watch a penguin being eaten alive, or watch two giraffes fighting, and and like one's very small or weak in some way, or watch the horrific things otters do to other creatures, and just film it and just not care? Or could you be the person? Could you be the cameraman who the famous Walt Disney thing of they literally drove the lemmings over the edge for the shot? Could you do that?
Well, that's a really bad example, because that's recognized as horrifically unethical by the documentary industry today.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but what I'm saying is it's all on that level of, could you detach yourself from the lived experience of other living creatures that you have potentially formed an emotional bond to?
So, so in so one time when I was at church camp, we were at the swimming hole.
It doesn't count if it's Christians. You have to have an emotional attachment to them.
No, I watched a midair fight between an osprey and a bald eagle. I was like, wow, that's cool.
Yes, but
yeah,
you haven't. Okay, imagine you'd followed one of those creatures for months.
Yeah.
You got attached to it. You'd given it a name. Like, as nature documentaries like to give animals names, right? When they follow them, you've given it a name. You're following it. You filmed it every day for months, and then you watch it get attacked by something bigger that's going to kill it. Like, even if you could stay and film that, would the guilt of not doing something eat away at you, or would you struggle not to evolve yourself? Like, if you had a pet dog, like, say you have a pet dog and you are out at the park and another dog attacks your pet dog, do you think you could just stand there and watch that happen?
No, but there's a difference between...
No, there isn't. That's what I'm pointing out. To neurotypical people, there is no difference. They get attached to animals very quickly, and they would, like, I remember being a kid and being angry at seeing small animals being hunted on nature document. I never liked the nature documentaries because the animals got killed, and I used to get angry at the cameramen because they didn't step in and do something when they were right there. Like, like birds that had fallen out of the nest and things. Like, it wouldn't have done any harm to just give it a nudge and put it back into the thing, but they do not interfere. Like, could you prevent yourself interfering in that situation? Like, all you're doing is giving it a tiny nudge. It's nothing. But if you nudge it into the nest, it's going to live, and if you don't, it's going to die. Like, could you live with yourself not doing that? It's for a lot of neurotypical people, and for a lot of those of us who have the more empathetic neurodivergencies.
Yeah,
that's unthinkable. Right? That's why I don't watch a lot of nature documentaries, because I don't like seeing animals get hurt, and I don't like the fact that there were humans there who could have done something without causing any harm to anything else in the ecosystem and didn't. Like, that bothers me. It bothers me on the level of, as a child, I couldn't read Rainbow Fish because it made me cry. And movies make me cry. Like, I'm a delicate little flower. Okay? But this is what I'm pointing out, right? That's the difference between, like, I'm at one major extreme of this. And the fact that you can say, well, actually, yeah, I would film it and I would... That doesn't make you a psychopath. Yeah. That makes you a different kind of neurodivergent to me.
Yeah.
But you would have reasonings and justifications, and you would have understanding of the consequences of your actions, right?
Yeah. Like, for instance, putting the baby bird back in the nest is actually probably a bad idea, because the parents might actively reject it.
Because a human touched it and the human sent. Yeah.
Well, actually, they might have seen the human touch it.
Yeah.
And also, the baby bird being out of the nest might actually be a fledgling, and the parents are probably around to help out.
No, but like the parents weren't around to help out in the particular scene I'm talking about. Yeah. Right? In the scene, it was literally the bird has to make it back into the nest or not. Yeah. And its life depends on it. And they did nothing. Right? And the parents were nowhere near, because the parents were off hunting or whatever the hell they were doing. Yeah. I think it might have been baby penguins, or it might have been like some other little white fluffy bird. It might have been owls. Like, it wasn't... Yeah. There was no... This is what I mean. Like, there was no logic. Yeah. But the reason I ask you, like, you said it. You said there's a difference between your pet dog and like
nature,
a wild
red
animal.
Tooth and claw.
Yeah. And... But what I'm getting at is, yes, there is a difference. And again, to people who are at that end of the psychological spectrum, there's a difference there too, because that's their dog and they love that dog. But, like, if I had a dog and it got attacked and it was being, like, mauled, and, like, full on, like, mauled at the dog park by another dog, I would not hesitate to jump in there and, like, hit the other dog or kick the other dog or do something to try and protect my pet. Yeah. But I also wouldn't necessarily think it through. It would be a visceral gut reaction, right? It would be a, oh shit, I've got to do something, and my instinct would kick in. Yeah. Right? Whether it's my dog, someone else's dog, whether it's, animal attacking a child, whatever it is, instinct first. And what I'm getting at is, and as we see with Harlan, it's not about his instinct, because the instinct in that scenario is to save your own life, right? Instinct in that scenario is to panic and to freak out. He's very calm, he thinks it through, and then he acts. And that's the difference. That's the neurodivergency that I'm pointing out.
Yeah.
Like, it can be, like, again, I use the dog in the park as an example to show you sort of the level of the way humans pack bond, but it could be anything, right? Like, if you're out on the street and you see like an owl attacking, like chasing down a mouse, like, are you gonna, like, what's your visceral reaction to that? But what I'm getting at is the way you react to protect or to move. In those scenarios, it's if someone told you you've got 10 minutes to live and in 5 minutes you're going to be useless, you've got nothing left to do, you are not going to sit there thinking things through, asking intelligent questions and making a plan so intricate it takes a world famous detective like 5 days to unravel it.
Yeah.
Right? You are going to go, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, and you're probably going to waste 2 minutes panicking. You're not going to be looking at about the time, right? You are going to be, there's that human instinct. You are going to waste a lot of time panicking. You're not going to be thinking straight, whereas he's calm, collected, and that's the difference. That's what I'm pointing out, right? And it's not, again, like, I keep using all these examples of different animals and would you step in, would you not? The point I'm making is human beings generally, in most of the neurological spectrum, psychological spectrum, react emotionally first in panic situations. You have to be trained not to freak the fuck out. There's a reason we do fire drills, right? There's a reason soldiers are trained to react a certain way and drilled in that multiple times. There's a reason, you know, when we teach kids something, we teach them 10, 20, 30 times. There's a reason when you do say you learn CPR, you're not just taught it once. You're taught it again and again and again until it becomes muscle memory. Because if you're not, you see a situation like that and you will panic and your brain will go blank and you will not do the right thing. Because that's what human beings are, fucking useless in an emergency, right? We are really bad. We have to be trained not to be. Whereas Harlan does it automatically because of that neurodivergency, because of that element of being a little bit of a psychopath. And I mean that affectionately. And some people's minds are wired that way, and that's great. Good for them. I hope they, you know, have all the support they need. But his children are the dark side of what happens when someone doesn't have the emotional support and their brain is wired that way.
And it is like a really sad irony that he ended up accidentally constructing his family dynamic like the plot of a parlor murder.
Yeah, but this is the thing, right? He does that because that's how his mind works.
Yeah,
as well. Like, his mind works that way, so of course that's how it's going to end up, right? And he views his family as characters in a Cluedo game. And this is the thing, right? Marta's very sweet. She's very kind. She's, you know, she's traditionally, she looks cute. She's all those things I just said about would you rescue the cute animal. The difference is most people would react with, I need to protect her. Not with, okay, this is how we're going to do this and this is how you're going to get away with murder.
Yeah.
Like, that's the difference I'm pointing out. And just to Spaghetti in the chat asking, what about the owl getting hungry? That's not the point. That's not the point I was making. The point I'm making is you see a natural process in which a smaller creature is in danger. How do you react? And also the point of cute animals. Cute is subjective. Like, what's cute to Ring is not cute to me. I can't stand birds. Ring loves them. I love dogs. I love big dogs. I've got friends who hate them. I've got friends who prefer corgis, and I'm just like, it's a rat with ears, like, you know. But the point is, what I'm making is, it's how you react in the situation, and Harlan has the hallmarks of that neurodivergency, and it feeds into what he views as a good death. because he is able to do what very few people are able to do, which is at the moment he's told he's going to die, at that moment he's able to think clearly. And like, that's not like human beings. There's a reason we get an adrenaline rush when we're in danger. Switches off your upper brain and you have your fight, flight, or fawn response. That's what normal human beings, quote unquote, normal human beings do, right? Your adrenaline kicks in, you stop thinking, and you do one of the 4 basic instincts to try and live. You try and run, you try and fight, you play dead, or you try and plead your way out of it.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't do any of those things. He thinks and he's calm and he plans. That's what makes him that's the sign that he's neurodivergent.
Yeah.
And he's closer. Like, he might not be an outright psychopath, but he's closer on the spectrum to that than someone like me, whose gut reaction in that situation would be like, I'd be panicking. I'd be like, you need to run. You need to go now. You need to, like, I would not be thinking straight enough to make that plan. Even if my urge was to protect her, because that's not how my mind works. And that's the point I'm making. Like, for him, a good death is not just about it being aesthetically good. Like, his wants and needs are aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
He wants the kind of death that can be written into a story. Like, absolutely, that character, from what little we see of him on screen, he absolutely wants someone to come along in 10 years' time and write the novel of his murder.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he wants, right? His house is set up for it. He's just, everything's there. And that's how his mind works. Most people would be horrified at that. Like, it might, like, if someone said to you, you're going to be murdered in a really grisly way and it's going to be your own child that did it, but someone's going to come along and write a best-selling kind of fictional novel in 10 years after you died.
Yeah.
Most people would be horrified at that and would be like, why are you turning me into a freak show? It's different levels of neurospicy.
Yeah.
It's like, and on that spectrum of neurospicy, he's like lemon and herb. He's not spicy. He's found a way to make his neurodivergency work for him. But his children, like, it's the nature-nurture debate. They've got that nature of, they've inherited from their father that, I don't want to call it callousness, because it's not callous, because that implies malice, right?
Yeah.
But that coldness, that ability to be very logical.
Yeah.
And to compartmentalize and to do those things. But what they've also then had is the nurture of, they haven't had a loving environment. They haven't had people around them to emulate who were actually good examples of empathy and love and kindness. And on top of that, they've also had all the money in the world, so they've never had to learn how to be around other people.
And it is worth saying that the most, compassionate member of the family
is all the markers of a psychopath. Yeah.
No. I mean, aside from Harlan, is the most removed from him by blood and nurture.
Yes. And again, that's the nature-nurture debate. I'm not saying I don't want this to turn into a bad blood kind of thing. Like, blood like wine, but the blood's bad. No. It's... There's always a genetic component to any mental health issue, right? I've been very open. I use myself an example because I wouldn't want to use anyone else because it wouldn't be fair to them. But I've been very open that I have a lot of mental health issues and have for a while. I have those mental health issues because of what happened to me, but also because of a genetic potential predisposition. Like, I look at my family and I think, yeah, you could have been the way I was. Like, I look at my family and I'm like, yeah, you're how I would have been if I hadn't got therapy.
Yeah.
You're how I would have been if I hadn't met Ring.
Yeah.
You're how I would have been if this hadn't have happened or that hadn't have happened.
And
it's not necessarily neurotypical or healthy, quote unquote healthy.
something, my two-parter Diary of an Exorcism Survivor
Mm-hmm.
videos.
Mm-hmm. Like, and this is the thing, right? We're all, no one's neurotypical. There's no such thing. Um, and that's what Harlan is, right? Harlan has had everything, but Harlan had, we see his mother still in his life.
Yeah.
She's always been there. She's been this quiet, staunch thing there, and we presume when she was younger and more active, she took a more active role in his life. He has a loving mother who's still in his life. He has, like, notice how we never hear about his wife.
Yeah.
Like, he's got 4 kids, 3 living.
Okay, so
What about the wife? Where's the mother?
Actually, no. So I think he had 3 biological kids.
Well, 3 or 4, whichever. But
Yeah.
where's the mother? Where's the mother? Where's the extended family? Where are the aunties and the uncles? Where are the cousins? Yeah. Like, there's no broader support system there, right? And that's very telling. And I'm not saying in and of itself that is going to make someone neurodivergent or traumatized or anything else. I'm just saying it's a potential factor to consider. As with anything, right? Just it is what it is. And again, and I will say, right, the number of people I know who are close to that area of neurodivergency, they all love animals. They all have, like, no, seriously, they all love animals. They all, like, and when I say love animals, I mean would kill and die for a bunny on the street. They understand things in a different way. They are all very into social justice. They are all left wing. They are all very anti-racist. They are all, because they understand logically why those things matter. They don't necessarily have an immediate visceral emotional reaction to seeing those things, but they understand that those things are not good, and therefore they don't support them, and they understand that. But then because what they needed was someone to tell them, look, this is how this thing affects me, because they care about the person.
Yeah.
Or this is how this affects other human beings, and can you understand that? Yes, I can. But yeah, they're all animal lovers. They're all social justice warriors, affectionately meant, not in the way the boy described her.
And since you did bring that up, perhaps we should veer off from, because I think we've talked.
Yes, I've talked a lot of
the concept of Harlan Thrombey's good death kind of into the ground. So let's veer into the family as a microcosm of America.
Yes. So we have our alt-right troll. We have our social justice warrior, feminist, Marxist, communist social justice warrior. We have influencer who's running an MLM. We have racist uncle. And we have spineless henpecked husband. And we have the archetypes of most of the people you would expect to find in middle class suburbia, right?
Yeah.
And they're all and you put them in a room together, and what's the first thing you do? You put them in a room together, you give them alcohol, and the first thing they start doing is discussing Donald Trump and immigration.
Yeah. and then pulling in the immigrant as a prop.
Yes. And very much tokenize her. I have to be very careful what I say, because there's a character in this scene who, like, the first time I watched this movie, I messaged Ring, like, this was months ago, right, when it like December last year. I messaged Ring and I was like, shit, these people have met my dad. Like, because wow. Like,
yes, he's an asshole, but we need an asshole.
Yeah. Or you know, everything he says is an opinion, and he wants his opinion, but everything you say is wrong, and he has to talk over you. Or you know, he uses the immigrant as a prop to justify himself. And this is like, we see that kind of person all the time, right? And not just my old man, not just the character in this movie. There's a reason these characters in this movie are the way they are. But what this movie shows you more than anything else is the corruption that money brings. Because all these characters are on the surface quite kind and reasonable, and they want to look after Marta, and they want to be kind to her. And you know, every one of them wanted her at the funeral, but every one of them was outvoted. You know.
I mean, only two of them said that.
Yes, but you know, the person who didn't want her at the funeral was Richard.
Yeah.
So it's very telling. But they're very kind while they think they've got everything, while they think they're in power. And there's an interesting discussion to be had about paternalism and white savior concepts. Like, they think they're going to save her, they're going to use their money to look after her until they don't have money, and then they turn into fucking animals. Because the money, you know, and waiting for the money is what makes them animals.
And I quote, you slept with him, you dirty anchor baby.
Yes. You slept with my granddad, you dirty anchor baby. Which is very telling, that the first thing they attack her on is her immigration status, her mother's immigration status.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the girl who the daughter who's supposedly the left winger. Like, if you were going to like put archetypes into this movie, she'd probably be the closest to my character, except I wouldn't sell someone down the Swanee to ICE for tuition fees, but you know, that's just me. But then I never grew up expecting money, so I could probably say no to it in a way a rich kid couldn't.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, right? All these people, they grew up with money. They grew up expecting money. They don't know how to live without it. To the point where they pass comments when they hear that one of them's been cut out of the will. This is probably the best thing that could ever happen to you. This is, you know, this is, Dad was strong enough to do what the rest of us couldn't do. So they know what's right. They know that at least one of them doesn't deserve the money.
And then Ransom turns it on its head when the will comes to light that they've all been cut out.
Yeah. But this is the thing, right? He's right. He's right, and so are they. The best thing that could happen to those people is having their money taken from them, and like having that safety net pulled out from under them, because they're selfish, and all they care about is the money.
Yeah.
But that's what this movie shows. Like, and goes very much. It sticks the knife in and twists it of all they care about is the money.
And I love the almost tongue-in-cheek metaphor of Ransom saying to Marta, "You can't take my ancestral home."
And then Benoit Blanc laughs and says, "No, Harlan bought it in the 80s from a Pakistani millionaire.
A real estate billionaire."
And by this point in the movie, we know they're all racist.
Yeah.
But they're very much, they're white, they're polite white racists, right? Like, all their racism is microaggressions.
I mean, with the possible exception of the Nazi.
But like, this is the thing, right? The Nazi child is very much a product of his environment.
Yeah.
And that's what this film shows really well. It shows how people who are just worried about immigration and think that if you move to a country, you should do it properly, and, are worried about jobs and this, how a child growing up hearing all of that,
Yeah.
In the isolated, moneyed environment where he never questions anything but that he hears from his family.
Quote, America is for the Americans.
Yeah. When all he's hearing is that, is it any wonder that that's what he turns into? Like, and this, like, they are all a consequence of having money, too much more money than sense, right? This family all over, just more money than sense. If you've got enough money to put a fake door behind a window in your corridor, but you don't have enough money to teach your teenage grandson not to be a fucking Nazi, like, you fucked up somewhere, because you don't need money to do that second thing.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, right? And the family has this habit of, whenever anyone's called out for anything like that, like every time the son's called out, it's just, there's this awkward silence, and then a different comment's passed up and the subject's changed. Like, they don't deal with shit. The family do not deal with shit. Like,
they stir up drama and then just let it fester.
Yeah. Like, even when they all find out the truth, like when she finds the letter from her father about her husband cheating on her, it's very telling that the audio track for the movie at that point goes silent.
Yeah.
It's very telling. There's a line that Benoit gives when he approaches the great grandmother, Harlan's mother, and he says to her, "Please don't judge them too harshly if I'm the first person, as I suspect I am, to offer you my condolences." They don't care. He's died and they're so busy squabbling over the money. No one stopped to ask his poor mother if she's okay.
Yeah.
No one stopped to give her a hug. No one stopped to see if she's all right. They think she's off her head. They think she don't know what's going on, so they've just left her. Or they think that she's not. They care more about the money and the dead left than they do their family. They care more about money than each other as a family, and that's really, really telling. Like, and I have to be really careful describing this point of this movie, because I might start telling my own family history.
Yeah. But also, and corrects me if I'm reading too much into this, because I do sometimes have a habit of doing that. But the line that the house was bought from, a Pakistani, real estate billionaire.
Yeah.
Pakistan was once part of India and what our Native Americans also called.
Yes. No, exactly. And it's one of those things of that's chosen specifically, right? Because if they'd have bought it from, a Donald Trump subsidiary, it would not have been as much of an insult when he said it. They bought it off a brown person.
Yeah.
They bought it off one of those people who they think shouldn't be in the country. They bought land that once belonged to a brown person. They are so low on the totem pole that the people they think they're above because they're white, they had to buy from. They are not the first on this land. The brown people were here first.
Yeah.
They are the immigrants. There's so many layers of irony to that comment.
Yeah. They bought, the ancestral home who, the place that they believe that is their ancestral home, that they are frothing out at the mouth about the Latin American immigrant taking,
originally belonged to an immigrant.
No, originally belonged to someone who might have been called an Indian in an earlier time.
I love you. If there are any Pakistanis watching, I apologize for my spouse's Americanness. If they don't understand the difference between Pakistan and India, I apologize. That's a joke only a white person could make. I apologize. My spouse does not mean any malice by it. They just don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, telling a Pakistani that they're basically an Indian is like telling a Cuban that they're basically American. Or telling a Welshman that he's basically English. You don't do that if you want to live. So yeah. I apologize. I didn't know my spouse was going to say that, or I'd have told them not to.
Yeah.
But yes, no malice intended. But it's really interesting that you make that comment, Ring, because that's how white people view it. And like, okay, it's not a great comment to make.
Yeah.
But that's exactly the logic of white people. If white people think that it's basically Indians, and Indians, you know, and there's that there, that's the logic of the characters. That's why it's an insult to the characters, because they think like what you just said. Now, you didn't mean any malice by it. You didn't know any different. Fair enough. But, right, it's you've modeled why white people would be offended at being told that. Although, obviously, you were taking the piss out of it, so you weren't having to go. And, you know, if there are any white people who think that, you know, basically they're Indians and therefore that's what makes it an insult and is offended by that, it's, you know, you need to stop and check yourself, because first of all, they're not basically Indians, and second of all, your racism showing.
Okay, so here's my logic.
In white, like for most white people, India and Pakistan are basically the same, right?
Yeah.
India, like Columbus called the Native Americans Indians.
Yeah.
That's the joke. That's the joke, right? That it's a play on they've bought the land off the locals who were there before them and owned the land.
Yeah.
That's the joke from a white perspective. From a non-white perspective, the joke is, we were here before you. Yes, we were immigrants too, but we still have an earlier claim, a better claim on this land. And you calling it your ancestral home is basically you saying that you are descended from us, and yet you would be the first person to disavow that notion. Like, so the joke works on two levels, right? It works on the white level of Indians, basically Indians, and it works on that level. But it also works on the level of our ancestral home. No, it was bought from an immigrant.
Yeah.
Like, not only are you undercutting the concept of white people thinking they have ancestral homes in America, like the country's less than 300 years old. What ancestral homes?
Yeah.
What ancestral homes? I know people who've got like cutlery sets that are older than that. Keep up. You know, that's not an ancestral home. That's a summer beach house somewhere.
Or, you know, I'm not racist. I'd say the same thing about European immigrants.
Oh, yeah, no, if the Swiss came over in their clogs. Like, okay, first of all, no. Second of all, the Swiss are not known for clogs. That's the Dutch.
Yeah.
If we're going to go down the route of racist stereotypes, because why not? Although the Dutch do lean into it, to be fair. But again, she makes that comment, and if you are media literate, what's Switzerland famous for? What's Switzerland famous for when it comes to immigration? How many people in our audience have seen The Sound of Music? So you'd yes.
Every mountain.
Yeah. They run to Switzerland because Switzerland is neutral.
Yeah.
It's very white. It's very European. Like, Switzerland's known for being... Like, you can't live in a country that's famous for mountains and snow. and expect there to be a lot of non-white people there. Because, like, this shit's too cold for us. It's not happening. Nope. Like, I refuse to live north of New York City. Like, when we were looking at places to live, because I was like, that's too cold.
Something Nepal.
Yes, but like they were born and they are like they've been there for generations. I'm talking about like when I talk about non-white people, I'm talking about like they were talking about immigrants from South America.
Yeah.
If you can find me, right? If you can actually find me a Mexican or a Brazilian or someone from Uruguay or Paraguay or Argentina or any of those countries, right, who is willing to willingly, with no like money involved or like reason to go live in the Arctic Circle. Like, I mean, my family is Jamaican, and honestly,
I mean, I'm from Montana, and that's too cold for me.
Yes, but my family is Jamaican. I was born in Britain, and Montana's too cold for me. I ain't going any further north than that. Do you know what I mean? Like, when we're from hot countries, we like to stay near them. Like, I am not going outside that sort of distance from the equator. Like, I can't take the heat, but I'm not going that. I can't take the cold either.
Oh no!
You know, it's one of those things. It's a joke about. It's one of those things of. Look, they're talking about immigration and they're talking about whiteness, but they very carefully and very astutely dodge discussions of whiteness.
Yeah.
And I say they've very carefully and very astutely dodged discussions of whiteness because that's what racists do.
Yeah.
Right? If you talk to someone who just cares about immigration or is just worried about the illegal immigrants or, you know, just thinks that, you know, they shouldn't, like, whatever. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So, do you think that family, hand on heart, do you think that family would have given a shit if America had opened its doors to Ukrainian refugees?
Yeah.
That's the point that's being made. And they can argue till they're blue in their face that they would care. No, they wouldn't. Because those people are white. It's the same reason Poland opened its doors to Ukrainians,
I don't know. It depends on how MAGA Richard is.
But, like, it's the same reason Poland opened its doors to refugees from Ukraine.
Yeah.
But was turning back students from the Philippines and from African nations who were in Ukraine studying medicine. That's something that happened during this war because they weren't white. Yeah. Like there was. We all remember the stories going around, right? Of people saying if you're not white and you're in Ukraine, don't go to certain border crossings because they won't let you cross. Yeah. Like those stories were not fake. Poland currently has a fascist government. Those stories were not faked. And they're very indicative of, like, those discussions were happening on Twitter and on social media and in America as well, of when is an immigrant not an immigrant? When they're blonde-haired and blue-eyed, darling.
Yeah.
You know? When they don't have a discernible accent. That's what this is getting at, right? It's very much saying these people, I bet you all these characters would swear blind they're not racist. But they are, of course they are. Like even the daughter who's off studying her, I think they described it as a Marxist, communist, feminist undergraduate degree in social justice or something. Like they were taking the mickey, but gender studies probably, right? Something like that. Because it's always gender studies when right-wingers want to have a pop. They're all very right-wing, but they're not necessarily all January 6th right-wing. They're just right-wing enough that they would find a way to justify that kind of behavior. And then they produce children at two ends of the spectrum who are at each other's throats. But even the character who is supposedly social justice and left-wing and, you know, supports immigration and all the rest of it, even she, when she thinks she's going to lose her money, even she, the first thing she does is tell the people who could destroy Marta that her mother's undocumented. That's what she says to Marta. She says, I told them about your mother. Like,
and Walt.
Why did she do that?
And Walt shows up at her house to use that against her.
Yeah. And it's because at her, everyone's racist. Everyone's a little bit racist. I'm a little bit racist. You're a little bit racist. Okay. Everyone in the chat's a little bit racist. But it's how you deal with that, right? And what you do with that. Do you try and learn? Do you try and grow? Do you try and be better? Do you apologize when you're wrong or use that as a learning moment? Or do you try and justify it and, weasel around it and say, oh, but I was so scared I was going to lose this. And, how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
But there's a right way and a wrong way to deal with that. And this family do it all the wrong way.
I want to kind of talk about the scene where Walt confronts Marta. Because
Marta's very clever.
Well, also the way that scene's shot.
Yes.
So
go on.
So Marta is going out the back door because there are news, people out front. And Walt shows up and starts this speech about how her mother is undocumented, and if she renounces the will, that they can make sure that things are seen to, and his words are very kind, but the way the film,
threatening.
The way the cinematography and the body language is portrayed gives the audience the clear communication that this is a threat.
Yeah, it's a threat. And also the way he approaches her down a corridor where she's on her own. He corners her against the wall. He's very predatory, right?
The shots of his cane striking the foot of his cane striking the ground.
And he's very predatory. He's very, and the thing is, right, this is what happens. Like, when people are in a position of power, they think they're being reasonable. They think they're being kind, even.
Yeah.
Like, they think that by offering to do something for someone as a quid pro quo, they're being kind. They're being reasonable. But you see in that scene how his reasonableness slowly unravels. Like, he starts out very calm, very, Marta, let's have a conversation. I can help you. I know lawyers. But the more she looks at him and the more she doesn't answer him, the faster he talks, the sharper his words get. The more pointed his threats get, the tighter the camera angles get, and the more he seems to loom over her.
And the more forcefully the cane is jabbed against the ground.
Yeah, like, you fully expect when she says to him, like, actually, no, I can do it myself. That takes some bravery, because what that really shows is, like, when people talk about, and again, like, when people talk about how men can be threatening and not necessarily realize they're threatening. Yeah. Or, and like, you'll hear things about women saying, oh, when men are on the street, I cross the road, and then there are immediately cries of, but not all men. It's like, no. But what you don't understand is that as a man, a map person, masculine presenting person, right? You are a threat. And your behavior can be very threatening, not just without you even consciously realizing you're doing it. Now, it is conscious in this character's point of view. And like, this is what abusers do a lot of, right? They behave in a way that's very plausibly deniable.
Yeah.
Like, he can say, oh no, I went to see her and we just had a conversation, officer, and we were just talking and I offered to help her with her mother, and he could word that very, very carefully where there's no threat. But if she tells that story, what she's going to say is, he snuck up on me, he cornered me, he was being harsh with me, he was threatening me. And he'll go, no, I wasn't threatening her, I was just making conversation. Both of them are right.
Yeah.
And he knows it, right? He knows that he's threatening her in this situation. That's what makes him dangerous. Like, for me, having been in the situation where not just men, but, women as well, figures of
And
authority,
he
use
knows.
their dominance, their social dominance, as conversational currency to try and control the discussion. And when you don't play ball with them, they freak the fuck out. Like, I fully expected the first time I saw that scene to end in him hitting her with the cane.
Yeah.
Because that's how that scene ends in real life. Like, that's what happens there. He hits her with, like, if you took that scene beat for beat silently and played that silently and changed the music over it, you could convince an audience that he's about to rape her. You absolutely can convince an audience of that. Because in a way he is, right? He's trying to violate her. He's trying to make her feel unsafe. He's trying to make her submit. And it's not sexual in this case, but it's the same power dynamic. It's a power grab. It's an attempt to control. Because that's what rape is. It's not sexual, right? It's pure power. It's a power play. And so, yeah, he didn't lay a hand on her. But psychologically, emotionally, the fact that he's gone to where she lives and gone to the back door, that's a threat in and of itself. Like, you show up at my door? You at my door? Like that? Cornering me like that? But you ain't gonna have time to start having conversations with me. I'm going back inside for a baseball bat or a kitchen knife.
Yeah.
Like, that's a threat in and of itself. Like, if it was dark out and he'd shown up at her door, he suddenly becomes much more dangerous than a man just trying to get his money, doesn't he? Without changing any other thing about that scene, just picture it that it's evening time and she's just gotten from work rather than it's morning and she's just leaving.
Yeah.
Like, and it's really cleverly filmed that way. To make him the threat, to make him the predator in that situation, because he is. And what's really telling is that up until that point in the movie, he is, for the most part, the most emasculated male character.
Yeah.
All the characters in this, let's presume they're cisgender. He's the most emasculated. He's the one who, runs round after daddy, runs daddy's business, doesn't have anything of his own. Even his wife is quite controlling, can't control his son. His son is running riot and there's nothing he can do about it. His son's presumably a monster of some description, and he's just weak. So to see him then become the predator there, like, that rings alarm bells for most AFAB people, because we've been taught weak men try and control women.
Like, even without the body language, you can tell from the cane itself that he needs the cane.
Yeah.
Because
like, it's not a fashion accessory.
Well, yeah, because if it were a fashion accessory, it would have a more, it would have a round or possibly stylized handle. That's either it's a Fritz handle or it's a modified Fritz handle, which is designed to fit ergonomically in the hand to make it make supporting the weight a lot easier on the arm.
Yeah. Like, and this is the thing, right? As a AFAB person,
yeah,
those are all alarm bells to me. He's physically not strong, or he has some sort of physical impediment.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. He's emasculated at home. His wife doesn't listen to him. His child doesn't listen to him. His family don't respect him. His own father doesn't respect him and thinks he's a child who's been handed everything and hasn't had the opportunity to grow up and be his own man. Like,
yeah.
Again, from a pop psychology point of view, as an AFAB person, I don't want to be alone in a dark corridor with that guy. I want to be alone anywhere with that guy. That guy's like, he's a powder keg. He's going to snap. Like, he's going to try and control a situation, and when he doesn't, he's going to get violent. Like,
Yeah.
because that's what we're taught men do, right? Men are reactive to all those things, and he's fully emasculated. And how do you regain your masculinity in a modern society as a man who's been emasculated socially, emotionally, psychologically? You go out and you find a vulnerable woman and you assert control. And that's what he's trying to do in that scene. Now, just because it doesn't end up in a sexual assault doesn't mean the potential's not there. And this film is very much like, it's filmed. So I promise you, like, I am not the only AFAB person who looked at that scene and like, the first time I watched this movie, I looked at that scene and I was like, he's the killer. Like, I already knew he wasn't the killer.
Yeah.
Like, I knew, I'd worked it out. I knew who the killer was. But that scene made me stop and think. That scene made me stop and think that this man is capable of extreme, heinous violence, and he's trying to assert control over his life. And that's enough.
Yeah.
And he's very, like, he's predatory. And this is the thing, you know, it's you know, they tell kids all the time, oh, you're bullying.
Your audio cut out, I think. No. So,
Any better?
yes, it's back.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, like, you know, they tell you, oh, your bully's got a bigger bully. He's got bigger bullies. He's dangerous because he's not dangerous to anyone else.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's about to snap because he's been pushed to the edge. The one thing he thought he had, his legacy from his father, he doesn't. And that's the last vestige of his masculinity and his identity. And when people's identity are threatened, you would be surprised what they are willing to do to regain some semblance of control over that.
Yeah.
That's what this entire scene's for.
Yep.
And speaking of that, I do want to just touch on the tools this movie uses from a cinematographer point of view.
Yeah.
Right? It opens, and it's very telling. Like, when I watched this movie, I wrote down horror tropes. I said it's horror tropes. It's like, it's the big old house on a foggy morning. It's, you know, everything's old fashioned and a little bit weak. The dolls have all got staring faces, and there's lots of them about the place. Like, the only thing missing is the monkey with the symbols, right?
Yeah.
And then
Meanwhile,
no, this is Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
Mystery and horror are two sides of the same coin. Like, what's horrifying about the horror as a genre?
You know,
genuine question. What's horrifying about horror movie?
It's for most horror, it's you don't see the monster until you do.
Yeah. It's the classic, it's the Hitchcock thing, right?
Yeah.
If you can set a bomb off in a room, but if you put it under the table and tell them they've got 10 minutes until it goes off, you get 10 minutes of suspense first.
Yeah.
Horror is about suspense and a missing piece of the puzzle, the hole in the donut, right?
Yeah.
So is mystery. Mystery is about not knowing everything, the suspense of waiting to find out, you know, waiting to see what happens.
So there is another side. You know, there is a reason why I said most horror.
Yeah.
Because there is also the horror that exposes you, where the horror comes from realizing the darkness that lies within the human spirit, and that's also a hallmark of, you know, the parlor mystery genre, where everyone is a toxic asshole to each other.
everyone's got motive.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, like it's one of the things mystery does really well as a genre, where it points out that even the people you would not suspect, even the people you know in your day-to-day life, are capable of murder.
Yeah.
And that's the truth that mystery really plays with as a genre. And this movie plays with. Like, if you don't believe that every person in that house is the potential murderer, it don't work.
Yeah. I mean, with...
Like, even if you know that they're not clever enough or not brave enough, or, you know, there's other reasons why they wouldn't have done it, you have to believe that some part of them makes them capable of murder.
Yeah. With one, you know, with one exception being Marta, who is the only genuinely kind major character.
And this is why you do spend most of the movie believing that she did it.
Yeah.
And that reveal is not a surprise, because the mystery is, you look at all these people and you're like, they're all capable of murder except her. And because you're media savvy, because it's 2023 and you've grown up watching movies, you think, movies like to fuck me up. So if the movie is telling me to look at those people, I should be looking at that person.
Yeah.
And that's what we all do, right? That's what we all did in Game of Thrones, did it? Right, we all said J plus L equals R. R plus L equals J, right? We all knew that. We knew that was coming. And then they decided, no, it has to have shock value. The value in movies, the value of a mystery in media, any media, literature, movies, whatever, right? I'm going to climb on my soapbox for a second. The value is not in the shock value. The value is in it being a story that your audience can follow and that makes sense for your characters. Like, it is not a sign of bad writing that your audience knows what's going to happen. Yeah. That's a sign of good writing. That says that you've put enough in there that your audience is aware of it. Shocking your audience is not the goal. It should never be the goal, unless you're doing like shock gore, like horror, human centipede type shit, where shocking and horrifying is the goal. But generally, like, if you've written a 10 hour, you know, if you've written a 10 series book series, and the last book, like, it's the Hitchcock quote again, right? If you blow up a room, then it gets blown up, and that's horrible. If you tell them that there's a bomb under the table and it's going to go off in 10 minutes, you get 10 minutes of suspense. But it's not fulfilling to your audience is after 9.5 minutes, an insane clown walks in and stabs everyone. That's just ridiculous.
Well, actually, it would be satisfying if, you know, at 9.5 minutes, the bomb smokes and a little bang flag comes out, and then the insane clown shows up and starts, you know, stabbing up everybody, only to be stopped by Batman.
Yes, but that's only within the Batman franchise. If you weren't in a franchise where that was the setup, that would not be a good outcome, right? If Batman doesn't exist in your universe, you shouldn't be writing it. Like, no, stop it. Okay, just stop trying to shock your audience. Like, things should have rewatch value.
Or rather, what makes a twist good isn't how isn't how you didn't see it coming. It's how after the the twist makes you reevaluate the piece
everything
of media
that came before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, when you know that you go back and you watch that movie again and you notice that, and you think, did she mix them up? No, she didn't. She's just they've been changed. Why is the naloxone missing? Why is this? And you notice those things, and it helps you reevaluate, but it doesn't diminish the rewatch value of the piece of media. Like, a twist at the end of a movie, right, It's a bit like ordering a meal at a really nice restaurant. You go to a really nice restaurant and you order your favorite meal. Not your favorite meal at that restaurant, just your favorite meal. Let's say your favorite meal in the world is like, I don't know, pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah? You go to a nice restaurant and you order the pizza. And it's not about, like, you're not going to be happy if they bring you out a chicken pie. You want a fucking pizza.
Yeah.
But what you want to see how they did it. That's what makes it special. Right? You still want pizza, but you want pizza that's handmade, that's lashed in olive oil, that's got the best ingredients on it, that's cooked in a real stoneware oven. That's what makes it special, right? Rather than it being from the freezer and you shoved it in the microwave for 10 minutes. That's the difference.
Or like to bring it to another genre staple, the point of Columbo isn't figuring out who the murderer is. It's watching Columbo figure out who the
yeah. It's like there's a reason, like, you all know I'm an opera fan. There are like maybe 10 really famous operas. Every opera company in the world is going to do at least one every season. Like, of a plot so common, like, you are expected, when you attend the opera, right, you are given a program. And in that program is a full summary of the story of the opera. And you're supposed to read that before you see the opera. You are not supposed to not know what the plot of the opera is. Because you're not watching the opera for the plot. You're not watching it for the surprise reveal at the end. Like, it's opera, right? The pretty girl dies, the pretty boy cries, and like the rich man wins. Like, it's opera. Like, what were you expecting? It's opera. No one expects any different.
It's Shakespeare. There's a lot of mistaken shenanigans, and either everybody ends up laughing and married, or everybody ends up dead.
Yeah, right. Like, it's a very famous opera, Tosca, right? At the end of the opera, she jumps off a bridge and commits suicide. Right? If I go and see a version of Tosca and she doesn't jump off the bridge at the end, and the love of her life has not actually been killed, and they stand up and it goes to a wedding scene, I'm not going to be like, oh, that's a brilliant ending. It's I wasn't expecting that. I'm going to be like, what the fuck? That's not the story.
Yeah.
Like, that's nonsense, right? And it's not about it, because what you're watching when you go to the opera, what you're looking for, how you appreciate opera is, how are the band playing? How's the actress singing? How are they performing that aria or those trills? Or, what's the setting like? What's the staging like? You appreciate opera for how it's staged and what's being done with it, within the confines of the plot. Not because they're going to change the plot and change the ending. Yeah. It's not what it's for. Right? People don't go see the same opera done by 10 different opera companies over the course of a decade because they don't know the plot. They go because every opera company will do it differently and will have a different spin on it, but it will still fundamentally be the same story and the same music and the same, overarching themes.
Yeah, or whether or not the dagger that he sees before him is real, the plot of Macbeth stays the same.
Yes. Like, hang on. And he's, this is the thing. Like, if you went to see a Shakespeare play, like if you went to see Romeo and Juliet and they didn't end up dead, you'd be pissed off. You'd be pretty pissed off, right?
Yeah.
Like, or if you went to see, like, again, this was why Tony Stark dying in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was taken so badly. And, like, this was why people thought it was really clumsy that they set Quicksilver up to die.
Yeah.
because it was just like you set Quicksilver up to die, you set Hawkeye up to die, and then you killed Tony off. Like that was not fulfilling for your audience.
Okay, you mean you set Hawkeye up to die in Age of Ultron, and then you killed off Quicksilver with a pithy comment.
Yes, right? Or like they set up Hawkeye to die, but then when Tony was killed, it was like.
I mean
Tony's death was not like narratively well done at all. Like his funeral was fucking weird. Like them just standing up in silence. Like I appreciate you had to keep it secret who died, but like you should have at least told your actors so they could act it properly.
Yeah.
Like them not knowing who they were mourning just made it look awkward and weird.
Yeah.
Like that's not what that was. It doesn't work, right? If you'd have had them grieving Hawkeye, that would have worked. Because, but more importantly than that, if they'd have known who they were grieving, it would have worked. Because what you've done is you've created a situation that actually the audience can be invested in. The audience, Game of Thrones, everyone was invested. Jon Snow's going to be king. Jon Snow's the secret child. Jon Snow, it's Jon Snow, it's Jon Snow. We had so many seasons of Jon Snow, Jon Snow, Jon Snow. Mm-hmm. And then what do we get?
Who has a better
Dany
story?
the Mad Queen and the Bran the Broke. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, that was not fulfilling for the audience. And that's the difference, right? And...
or something lost in J.J. Abrams' mystery box approach to storytelling.
Yeah. Like, if a twist is not a twist just because the audience doesn't see it coming. The audience should see a twist coming. That's what a twist is for. What you're doing with a twist, it's not about I need to shock my audience with the twist itself. It's I need to impress my audience with how I handle the twist.
Or I need to impress my audience with how well the twist works on rewatch.
Yeah. Like if a movie is so bad, right? If your twist is so bad that knowing that thing is going to happen before I see the movie will ruin the movie for me, it's a bad twist. Okay, like if I'd have watched this and before we even started, I said, "Oh, by the way, Ransom did it."
Yeah.
To you, would that have ruined the movie for you?
No.
Right, because it's a good twist the way it works.
Well, I don't even really consider it a twist because, because
it works within the plot. This is what I'm getting at. The plot builds up to it, so it follows the plot.
Well,
let's say this plot, right? Let's say this had have gone on, and then I just said, actually, it was a social justice warrior girl with a candelabra in the bedroom. You'd have gone, what the fuck?
So you didn't let me finish. I was I was gonna say it's not a twist because much like Glass Onion, Knives Out isn't really a mystery movie. It's a social commentary wearing the skin of a mystery movie.
Yes, that's because mystery as a genre is social commentary. Yeah. You go back, read Murder on the Orient Express. How's that not a commentary on the rich and elites? Like how, Columbo, every episode of Columbo when he deals with rich pricks who think they're cleverer than him because he mumbles and he wears an old jacket and he drives an old busted up car. Like, they think they're cleverer than him because they have class markers and he doesn't. And yet he still catches them out. Like, mysteries are, by definition, social commentaries. That's what they're for. The mystery is not in who done it. The mystery is in, oh, look at the world around you. Look at what I'm going to show. The big reveal is not a reveal of who done it. It's a reveal of the world around you and how you can apply what you've read or witnessed or watched to that world.
Yeah.
As a commentary. Yeah? At least the best mysteries are. And to be fair, a lot of media is like that. Now, that doesn't mean you can't enjoy it on a popcorn level of let's just kick back and enjoy. But you're missing something if you do.
I have opinions on John Carter, but we do not have enough time for me to go over my opinions on John Carter.
We need to. I'm going to start. Hang on, I'm going to write it down. We need to do John Carter sometime soon.
Yeah.
If we do like a bad movies month, we'll do John Carter. Yeah. John Carter. Do you know what year that movie came out by any chance, Native?
It was. I think it was like 2012, maybe 2011.
Oh, is that the one? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, John Carter of Mars.
Yeah. The one where he was like, in all the movie things, he looked like a Neolithic human, but it turned out he was on Mars or some shit.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, one of the movies that made the surprisingly common mid 2010s grave cinematic sin of underutilizing Bryan Cranston. Because Bryan Cranston is in the movie, but he's only in there for like the first 10 minutes as the post as the head of the Union fort.
Yeah. But yeah.
Because leave it to Edgar Rice Burroughs to write a protagonist who is an ex-Confederate.
You know what? It's been like 2.25 hours and we've not mentioned the channel punching bag, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it, right? In the UK, when...
Yeah.
Which one was it? Half-Blood Prince came out? Yeah, Half-Blood Prince came out. 3 guys got literally arrested because what they did, they made a giant banner and they hung it over the main road in the UK. And on the banner read the word Snape kills Dumbledore.
Yeah.
To the point where the news, when they were like reporting on this was like 2 days after the book had come out, right? They were reporting on this. They literally blurred the banner out and the headline was Men Arrested for Harry Potter Spoiler.
Yeah.
Like, they blurred the banner out. And it's like, okay, but does knowing that Snape kills Dumbledore ruin that book for me? No. No, it doesn't. Because that book sets me up to expect Snape to kill Dumbledore and to understand why. And not only that, but when you read the later books and you understand why and the reasoning behind it and the plot that was going on, it reframes that scene in a different way and makes it rewatchable and rereadable.
Or to bring it to a more acceptable pop culture comparison.
No, but the point of, right, let me just finish what I'm saying about this first. But, right, when that book first came out, oh my God, the fandom. This was before she was, like, out as a TERF, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, the entire fandom split. Like, you can still go on a famous crafting site for knitters and crocheters, and people were making, like, armbands and scarves that said on them, keep calm and trust Snape. And then other people were like, Snape the Death Eater. And it was a whole thing in the fandom, right? You were either pro or anti-Snape, and that was just, like, it was a big thing. Like, and that was... I've been to football matches that weren't as charged as that. Like, I've seen real old rivalry football matches that I wouldn't attend for fear for my life be less vicious than those online arguments got.
Yeah.
But then the twist was reframed by the last book and the explanation.
Yeah.
And therefore it reframed it. Right? And that's what good media does. And is, again, those books did have some redeeming qualities, even if she doesn't. And, you know, as people who are media literate, we can and are allowed to say that. Media can have redeeming qualities even when its creator is terrible.
Yeah.
And one of the things that book did really well is it took that twist, reframed it, and gave it rewatch value.
Yeah.
Because, like, Snape killing Dumbledore had no rewatch value to start with because it came out of nowhere. He was just there. Like, but it did if you'd engaged with the media previously. Because for 6 books you've been told Dumbledore trusts Snape, Dumbledore trusts Snape, Dumbledore trusts Snape, but no one else trusts Snape. Sirius hates Snape. Even Arthur's suspicious of Snape. Even Molly doesn't like Snape, but Dumbledore trusts Snape. And I trust Dumbledore, therefore I trust Snape. And that's from Remus, who Snape has outed as a werewolf. I trust Dumbledore, therefore I trust Snape.
Yeah.
Every time Snape has been the suspect, he's not the suspect, he's been trying to help. And so as a media literate person, at least that was my argument, I'm media literate, I understand that these books have been telling me for 5 books, Dumbledore trusts Snape, Snape can be trusted. Therefore, something else is going on here. There's a reason Snape stepped in.
Yeah.
You can trust Snape. And it wasn't until the last book came out that we found out, yes, actually you can. Right? And that was the point. And that, when you take those books as a whole, that makes sense, right? That plot makes sense as a whole. But if you just take that one fact in and of itself, it doesn't make any sense. But you have to take the whole media. That's a plot twist done well. The plot twist was Snape kills Dumbledore. But if you'd actually been paying attention to the 5 books beforehand, that's not a plot twist. Like, it's not a plot twist that Snape kills Dumbledore on Dumbledore's orders. It's a plot twist that Snape kills Dumbledore because Dumbledore trusted Snape. Like, the plot twist is reframed. And the reason I use that as an example is, again, bad people can make good media sometimes. Yeah. Not that I'm saying the books are good. Like, I don't reread them anymore. But I read fan fiction, it's better.
Or as a kind of
that's
reverse, how, well, where, 1970s, 1980s, there's this little movie trilogy, you might have heard of it, called Star Wars.
Oh, God. Here we go. Yeah, go on.
And, the famous twist in the middle of Empire Strikes Back, well, middle of the trilogy, end of Empire Strikes Back, is, no, I am your father, where, we learn that, even though Obi-Wan tells Luke in A New Hope that Darth Vader had killed Anakin Skywalker, and, well, in a very roundabout and cagey way. And then the prequel trilogy came out, and we got Revenge of the Sith, where we have the final, because it wasn't the final, because Obi-Wan came out later, and the final confrontation between Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, where in the words of Obi-Wan Kenobi, he was telling the truth from a certain point of view.
Yes. From a certain point of view, Darth Vader did kill Anakin. But from my understanding, and again, you all know I haven't seen Star Wars, but from my pop culture osmosis of Star Wars, my understanding is that Anakin never fundamentally changed as a person. Like, his priority and his motives were always the same. He would do anything for his family. But those decisions and making those decisions led him to becoming Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And also led him to sacrificing himself to save his son as Darth Vader and getting his redemption. Like, he never fundamentally changed as a character. That's why that twist works, right? Because it follows the plot. You understand how that works.
Yeah.
And
like for a great visual example, I can't name the video because off the top of my head, but there's as a great great visual example of what I'm talking about. Someone did an edit of Obi-Wan's speech to Skywalker in A New Hope by cutting in scenes from that final confrontation in Revenge of the Sith as if they were flashbacks as Obi-Wan is telling the story to Luke.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, it works because, like, and again, that's bringing it back to Knives Out, right? He talks about the truth, and the truth speaks with a forked tongue.
Yeah.
That's the line in this movie. Like, facts speak the truth with a forked tongue. And the problem with the truth is not knowing the truth, it's knowing what to do with the truth.
Yeah.
It's like, because from a certain point of view, right, Marta killed him. From a certain point of view, she told him he was dying, so he committed suicide. Even though he wasn't dying, she killed him because she gave him that information that pushed him over the edge, that made him commit suicide from a certain point of view.
And then from another certain point of view, Ransom killed him because
Ransom switched the bottles,
which led her to
believe that she'd fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ransom took the naloxone.
Yeah.
But then from another point of view, he committed suicide because he physically killed himself. And he told her not to ring the ambulance. And I'm sure I've quoted this line on other streams, and I'll quote it in future because it's one of my favourite lines in music of all time. There's a line from a Bon Jovi song. I know. Just look, I had an interesting teenage life, okay? There's a line from a Bon Jovi song, and the line goes, "Baby, there's 3 sides to every story. There's yours, mine, and lately there's the cold, hard truth."
Yeah.
The truth and the facts are not necessarily the same thing, right? And everyone has their own truth, but that doesn't mean that everyone is working with all the facts.
Yeah.
Like, a person's truth can be, that person killed my grandfather. That doesn't make it wrong. That's just their truth.
And, Benoit's method, as he self-described, is, he's not a truffle pig like the gentleman sleuths in your stories digging about. He follows facts until he arrives at the truth.
No, he follows the facts to a stated endpoint, and then the truth falls at his feet.
Yeah.
The truth falls at his feet. He doesn't seek it out. And then he, like, what he does in this movie, like what is characterized as this is a character for whom facts, truth, and justice are not the same thing, which is not normal in most propaganda movies, right? In most propaganda movies, the facts are the facts, and if you're guilty, you're guilty. Bang them up, Your Honor, right? Any cop show you want to name. When you're talking about detective and mysteries, it goes deeper than that, because it looks at what's the truth, what are the facts, and then what is the truth, and then what is the just outcome of those two things. Because if she had got those drugs mixed up, she had, would it have been a just outcome that she confessed to the murder, went to prison, and served the time?
No.
And didn't get the inheritance? No. Because Ransom set her up. But that would have been the facts.
Yeah.
The facts were that she was a good nurse. And that's what saved her. Right?
A good nurse with a kind heart.
Yes. And that's a truth. That's not a fact. That's a truth. That's Harlan's truth. Harlan's truth is this wonderful young nurse who plays go with him and jokes with him about morphine being the good stuff and is his friend and he cares about her. and she's kind and she's decent, and her truth is that she's willing to go to prison for life in a country, I might add, that still has the death penalty for murder, as the child of an undocumented immigrant. So like everything's stacked against her. And the thing is, she tries to save a life even though she knows she's throwing her own away.
And ironically, Harlan, throws away his life to save hers.
But again, it's this thing of truth, isn't it? Like when she says, "Oh, Fran's gonna be okay," and and Ransom goes off on his spiel, his confession, his third act breakdown, if you like. Right? You then see the facts versus the truth. He thinks she's gonna be okay, so he's able to use the facts. He even says, okay, so what are the facts? What are they going to get me on? Some light arson and
attempted, and battery.
And battery. And with a good lawyer, I can get, like, that's the facts.
Yeah, and with a good lawyer, which I have.
Yes. It's not the facts, it's the truth. That's his truth, but that's the bare bones of the facts, right? And we saw it in Glass Onion, where he said, I can find you the facts, but I am not judge, jury, and executioner. I am not Batman. I cannot get you justice.
Yeah.
And that's what this franchise does really well. And there is going to be a third one, so I read. So I'm looking forward to that. But again, it's the intersection of facts, truth, and justice. Because the facts are Harlan killed himself. There was confusion about the drugs he was taking. Ransom took the naloxone and mixed the drugs up to cause that confusion. And the reason Harlan killed himself is because he was told he was dying. Those are the facts. Yeah. Those are the bare bone facts. He was told he killed himself because he was told he was dying by his nurse. She's liable. She told him that.
Yeah.
But the truth is, Ransom set her up because he thought her life wasn't worth as much as his, because she's an immigrant and she's a nurse and he's daddy's little rich boy who's never had to work a day in his life.
And and she's standing between him and his inheritance.
Yes, that's the truth. This is like we see it with the two grandkids, right? Her truth is that her cousin is a Nazi incel who gets off to dead deer and swats Syrian refugees. His truth is that his cousin is a lefty liberal snowflake feminist, who, with the facts of the matter are we've got two teenagers who don't like each other. One is always on his phone, uses language that is indicative of being right-wing, of being an internet troll, but never says anything that, like, you never look at this kid and go, yeah, no, that kid was that kid was at the uprising. There's nothing this kid does that would make you think that.
Yeah.
And that's the facts. But what we hear is the truth of the matter is his family talk about him. He's a Nazi. He's an incel. He's this, he's that, he's the other.
Yeah. And no one disputes it.
And no one disputes it. Therefore, that's the truth. But that's not the facts. The facts that we have and the truth that we can glean from those facts are two very different things.
Yeah.
And I'm not defending the kid because clearly he was, but that's the point I'm making. Same with the girl, right? They say, oh, she's a bleeding liberal, bleeding heart, lefty, feminist, gender studies, vegan, all this stuff. Yeah, they call her. She's the first one to throw an immigrant under the bus.
Yeah.
And she does it without thinking about it. She just does it. Because for her own thing. So the fact that she's studying probably gender studies or something like that, and she presents herself as this left-wing, like ultra-liberal, all that. The fact is, she threw an immigrant under the bus. That's the fact. But is that the truth? The truth is she had her family pressuring her. She had her fear for her tuition. Her entire future's going up in flames. That's her truth.
Her mother telling
Her mother's
her,
broke.
her mother telling her that she's broke.
Yeah.
I don't believe she's really broke because she has a pattern of deceptive accounting.
Yeah. But that's what she told her kid in order to manipulate her kid. Like, so for the kid, the truth is, if I don't do this, I'm going to lose everything. But it's not necessarily the truth. It's just, the truth is, if you do this, you are throwing, like, what's the cost of your integrity, kid? A year's tuition. That's what that is. That's the truth. And from the audience, me looking at it, is the truth is that she's no better than the rest of her family, and it's all an act. That's my truth. But that's not all the facts either, is it?
Yeah.
Because this girl was kind to Marta. She offered her a joint when she was panicking. She supported her. She called her. Like, they clearly have enough of a relationship that Marta answered the phone to her.
Yeah.
Like, that says a lot. She knows Marta's mother's undocumented. That's not something you tell someone you don't trust.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine? You don't tell someone that. Like, so there's clearly more there. But, and again, it's this line of, okay, but the cold hard facts are this girl betrayed her. The cold hard facts are this girl chose her family over her integrity. This girl chose money over her integrity. Those are the cold hard facts, but they're not necessarily the entire truth.
Yeah, because the truth is also that her family is a toxic cesspit and they were all pressuring her into it.
Yeah, that's her truth. It's a version of the truth. But you can tell the truth of her story just as well without including that bit. And that's a different version of the truth. It's like with when Ransom goes crazy and he takes out the knife. The facts are he attacked Marta with a knife with intent to kill.
Yeah.
The truth is that the knife was fake. And he's going to go to prison for a long time.
And it was one of the best Chekhov's guns of the movie because near the beginning of the movie, when Harlan's talking to Marta, he says, sometimes you can't tell you get so caught up in it that you can't tell the difference between a stage prop and the real knife.
Yeah, exactly. The truth, the facts are he tried to kill her. The facts are he also didn't kill her. Much like the facts are he tried to kill Fran.
Yeah.
Or that he killed Fran, or did he or didn't he? And it plays with the truth and how people respond to different versions of the truth. Because the truth is, with the story with Fran, right, the truth is he overdosed her deliberately.
Yeah.
The truth is he thought he had, like, for a while they thought he hadn't killed. She was alive when they left the hospital.
Yeah.
That's the truth. That's the facts. The truth is that he thought she was alive. And therefore that truth made him do things he wouldn't have done normally. But when the truth becomes actually she's dead, it's only by hearing that she's dead and that truth changing. Because this is the thing, right? Someone's okay and then someone is dead. Those two things can both be true. It just depends on when you say them.
Yeah.
And, I think Marta's exact words were, they've got her stable. Well, guess what? Death is a stable state of being. Once you're dead, you stay dead. It's stable. Yeah. It's not technically a lie, is it? And this movie, again, playing with words, playing with truth, playing with facts.
Yeah.
But even still, even with all of that, Marta lied to him, and that confession, like any decent lawyer is going to go, well, he was lied to, and he was under stress, and he had a mental break. Like a decent lawyer can get him off those charges. Yeah. A decent lawyer is going to say, well, Fran was always doing drugs. She stashed joints in the clock, and she did this and she did that. They're going to get him off. Like, he'll get a slap on the wrist, they'll do a 2-year suspended sentence and he'll walk. But it's the premeditated nature of the killings That is the truth, and that's going to send him down for life, right?
Yeah.
It's the premeditated nature of his behavior and of the arson and the blackmail and everything else that are gonna, like, that's what, like, there's a reason if you are attacked and you hit someone, or if you are drunk or angry and you hit someone and it wasn't planned, you get a lesser sentence than you do if you go out and you plan a murder and then do it.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason for that. And that is because as humans, the human truth is that we deem one of those worse than the other. But the cold hard facts of the case are, if you do either of those things, you still killed a human being.
Yeah.
So, like, why is it different? Because of the truths around it. And there's this, and it's an attempt to objectivity, right? When we talk about fact versus truth, what we're talking about is objectivity versus subjectivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you can be objective and you can say, yes, it's, the sky is blue, the grass is green, the wind is 20 miles an hour heading easterly, and the humidity is 67%. All of that pulled out thin air, right? I haven't checked the weather forecast today. Those are all facts.
Or
verifiable.
to pull from a bit of drama that happened yesterday, and to be a bit crude.
But what I'm getting at is, you can say, oh, those are the facts. I can come along in that situation and go, do you know what? I'm fucking cooking. I'm red hot. That's my truth. Someone else will be stood there and go, I'm freezing. I need a coat.
Yeah.
That's their truth. Which of us is wrong?
Yeah.
We're both right. Or as Ring is about to say, gender.
Yeah. Or, the brute fact is, I have a dick between my legs.
That's a fact.
The truth is, sometimes my brain makes the happy chemicals when I present more feminine.
That's your truth. Like, sometimes you feel more feminine. Like, and as your spouse, my truth is, well, sometimes that dick's between my legs.
Oh, God.
I'll say it. I'll make a joke out of it. And we got into this argument with someone online last night. Like, my truth is that person who started with us last night has got a tiny little dick, and he's jealous of the fact that you've got bigger dick energy than he does. That's my truth. And he cannot disavow me of that truth. Mainly because he blocked me because he's a little pussy. That's my truth. But I don't know how big that guy... I don't even know if it was a bloke.
Yeah.
That's the facts of the matter. All I saw is someone insulting my spouse and having a go at my spouse's gender. And I said, fuck you, not on my watch. Like,
And he only started having to go at me because I jumped in to defend Bree because he was stirring up shit on Twitter for getting demodded for stirring up shit in Bree's live stream.
Or to put it another way, right? His truth is that he won the argument with Bree because Bree blocked him. But somehow it's also his truth that he's still somehow superior to me because he blocked me. Like, Bud.
So I think we should move to final thoughts.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things in mysteries. A lot of, like, the best way to use a mystery is what we've done, which is use it as a prism through which to discuss more important issues.
Yeah.
Like, mysteries, like, it's not about who done it, it's about the deeper truths. Like, media doesn't tell you the facts. Like, if all we cared about was facts, we'd watch nature documentaries every week and we'd argue about whether penguins can actually grow to that size, or, whatever the hell. Or whether lemmings really do jump off a cliff, like, spontaneously. Those would be the conversation. But it's not media is not about facts. Sometimes it is, but it's very rarely. It's not about facts, it's about truths and what truths you can get from that.
Yeah.
And the truths matter just as much as the facts. Probably more so, because the truths are what we base our lives on. And the truths are what speak to whether the decisions taken on the basis of those truths are just.
Yeah.
And the truth is different for everyone. And don't conflate facts and truth, because that's how you end up in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my final thoughts on it.
And do you have anything to shill?
2 things to show this week. I'm still looking for people to do my questionnaire. If you had a loss during lockdown, please do.
Think I need to.
Hang on. Please do sign that. If it's not in the doobly-doo, I'm sure Ring will put it in later for me.
Yeah,
it is there.
That's why I was saying I think I need to put it in the doobly-doo, because...
Second of all, is the link to our card in the doobly-doo?
Yes.
Yes, there's a link to our card in the doobly-doo, folks. If you're ever watching and you think of a movie that we should watch, or a book we should read, or a piece of media we should cover, click the link in the doobly-doo, scroll right down, or you can click the button near the top that says make a suggestion. And we now have a suggestion box where you can put movies, books, anything you think we should do in that suggestion box, and we will get that. Also put in it like who you are, do you want credit for the idea, etc.
Yeah.
All there, you can just do it. It's a very simple pro forma. You've all filled in an online form, folks. You don't need me to teach you how to suck eggs. But yeah, link in the doobly-doo.
Heads up, unless it's a specific episode, if you suggest a TV series that has multiple seasons, we probably won't cover it.
Yeah. Any TV series that's got less than like a dozen episodes, we're not going to cover in one episode. So suggest an episode. Movies, or if it's a franchise, tell us, do you want us to watch the first of it, the last of it, one specifically? Like don't drop a suggestion of like the MCU. Like that's a lot of pick one.
Yeah. like we've already and also we aren't going to cover something that we've already covered unless there are extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, unless something major has changed.
Yeah.
There is a tick box that says I accept that my information will be used to give me credit if my suggestion is used. You do not have to tick that to submit. If you do not tick that box and we use your idea, we will just say an anonymous submission recommended this subject. So you don't have to agree to that, but the tick box is there. If you want us to see your name and give you credit for it, just tick the box and let us know who you are and what your pronouns are. All the options are on the form.
Now, and firstly, if anyone is around Missoula today, there is a band that is having their debut performance at 7 p.m. called Evening Redness Out West. I'd suggest going and taking a look at them. And also next week we are going to be discussing Chirac.
I've been looking forward to this one and pushing for this one for ages. Make sure you understand Lysistrata, however you want to pronounce it, because that's what it's based on. Trigger warning, the movie is hard-hitting. It's about gun violence. It's hard-hitting.
It's also a Spike Lee movie.
It's a Spike Lee movie about gun violence. That's your warning.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you understand, if you like Greek stories in like modern reception, this was going to be part of the classical reception month, but shit happened.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting discussions that we're going to be having about that. So do tune in. Do we still tune in? I think it's Chirac. CHI-RAQ. It's on Amazon, I think. And there's probably other places you can get it as well. You can probably get it on DVD as well.
And I will say, spoilers for next week. This is going to be the first, because I did check on this. This is going to be the first instance where we will be covering a movie that Plugged In does not have a review for.
I mean, once you see the movie, you will understand why Plugged In doesn't have a review of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
It's a movie that's well worth watching, but it is hard hitting, and it asks some very, very important questions about guns, gun violence, gang warfare, race, class, gender, sex in America.
Yeah.
And it does it in a way that does not pull its punches. So just heads up if you're going to watch it before you join us on the stream. And obviously, because it's such an emotive topic and they are such emotive things we'll be discussing, expect next week's stream to be like expletive laden and very emotive as well.
Yeah, there's going to be a blanket content warning. And also, yesterday, I did a stream for Non-Binary Awareness Week where I went over Plugged In's review of Nimona. And I said this on Twitter, I'll repeat it here. How much Focus on the Family hates Nimona should be considered a recommendation.
I mean, at this point, if you tell me Focus on the Family hates a movie, it immediately goes on my to-watch list.
Yeah, and I will say that I am going to be including it at a thematically appropriate time. So probably, Trans Day of Remembrance, probably during the Pride slate, maybe during, Non-Binary Awareness Week next year. It's going to be a while, but it is on the slot.
It's on the list.
It's on the list.
Yeah. And again, if you have any ideas for recommendations for things we can do that you think would fit into certain themes, like you've got I just left an open box. You can type whatever you want in there. So if you want to say, do this movie and here's why, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll move to taglines.
Cool. Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, remember, use your noodle.
And remember, the purpose of a good storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.